Welcome to the Fifth Trooper podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Fifth Trooper Beginner's Guide to Star Wars Legion. I'm your host, Jay Shalansky, and joining me today is Ryan from a fellow podcast, the Stabcast.
Yep, we are the Stabcast. Well, I am. There's no we here.
So,
good to be back, man.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So Ryan and I, a couple other people, Krabick and Brendan France, we're all doing a Star Wars role-playing game for a while there, and we kind of haven't done it for a while because everything just kind of fell apart. But hey, you know what? Things happen. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but yeah, it's good to talk to you and see you again.
Yeah, man.
So for people who maybe haven't had a chance to listen to Stabcast, can you give us like an idea of how you guys approach Legion and what you guys talk about over there?
Sure. Stabcast was born in a game comic store parking lot. You know, we would sit and loiter outside our local game shop for hours. And when Legion came out, we just decided to do that, but put it on the internet. So we're four friends that have been friends a really long time. We all play a different faction, and we try to be competitive to meddling amounts of success. And we try to just kind of keep it casual. We mostly yell at each other and keep it fun.
Yeah, and I would say one thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing that you guys do that's different from other casts is you guys do a lot of like podcast version of battle reports where
we start off every show with usually my co-host Ben makes an excuse for why he hasn't played, but then we all talk about, you know, a game we've played this month or something that we thought was cool for to try to find a cool teachable moment, or complain about dice, whichever.
Yeah. And so I think if you're out there listening and you want to go listen to them and really get into you know, the battle reports and how games go, and you know, I guess it's kind of in depth as Stabcast can go, I suppose.
Yes, that's fair. That's fair.
But so Ryan's joining me today because we're going to, you know, we did list building last week, and so now we're going to talk about the I'm going to call it the objective deck. I think it has a different name, but that's what I call it, which is basically your conditions, battlefield, and objectives. And that, I think, what we call turn zero, right, is a real big part of the game.
Yeah, turn zero can make or break you. And your battle deck should be a huge part of something you do when list building. And I even sometimes will start with my battle deck and kind of build my list around it instead of an afterthought after the fact. But you can, you know, there's lots of ways to make a sandwich.
Yeah. So. And so, you know, when we covered list building last week, like a tool like Legion HQ, our tool, you know, promotion again, but Legion HQ, you know, they'll have the battle deck, as Ryan called it. I like that. Maybe I'll call it the battle deck.
I think that's actually what it's called on the RRG. So,
oh well, you know, I'm not really much of a rules man.
You're not the rules guy. It's fine.
But so you know, I think there's absolutely multiple different ways to approach it. Ryan's right. Like you could put together your battle deck, understanding what you know you're going to be good at, and then or what you understand maybe, and then build around it.
And if we're, you know, with this being aimed at, you know, Legion 101 for newer players, that may be a great place to start, or may be the only place to start. If you just have the core box, bam, your battle deck is done, and you have to work on understanding the you know, 12 cards that come in just that box. If you've gotten the 2 upgrade packs, your choices get a little more open, and you get to figure out what your list is good at playing, or what I prefer to play is, because my battle deck doesn't change that much list to list. It's just what I as a player like to play. And I'm good at playing, because your battle deck may, honestly, it's one of those things that may not matter. If you're a red player, it doesn't matter. If you're not bidding, it doesn't, you know, it only matters in a few smaller situations. The bigger bid you take, the bigger impact it'll have.
Yeah. And so for those of you just starting off, basically, like Ryan said, in your core box, you get 12, and then, or 9, is it 9 or 12?
I think it's 12. I think you get 4 of each.
Right, because you get breakthrough, intercept, key positions, and sabotage. Yeah, you would get.
Yep.
No, is sabotage?
No, sabotage is in the box. It's It's breakthrough, intercept, KP,
Recover.
key positions, and recover supplies.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
my favorite card and your least favorite card.
Yeah. But for those of you who don't know, there's actually 2 expansion sets, vital assets and priority supplies that expound on your battle deck and also give you some like minis and like things for the objectives that are in there. But let's I think what we could do, Ryan, is kind of we'll go objective, deployment, condition, and then maybe we'll just cover each card that even with the expansions and just kind of talk about it, like a real quick summary and how to do it. So if you can go ahead and pick one if you want for an objective.
Sure, yeah. Let's start at the best card in the game, or recover the supplies.
Okay.
This honestly for me is the one that when I'm teaching Legion, if this is Legion 101, this is the 500-point game I play. I always play recover supplies, because I think it's the most intuitive, that teaches you not just to sit on the key position, but that actually tells you this is a war game where we got to get out on the map and do stuff. And recover the supplies is we put a box in the middle of the table, and then we take turns putting, each player puts 2 boxes on the table for a total of 5. And at the end of the game, whoever has the most boxes win. You can get a box by going with a trooper unit leader, and that's something we'll talk about quite a bit, the difference between unit leaders and trooper unit leaders. You can go up and spend one of your actions to claim the box, and then you can move it with you.
And so and I guess we can give advice for each one, right? This is a great hero objective. Like, so if you're playing, hero spam for rebels, you got a Jedi Luke, that's Ryan, you got Jedi Luke, Jin, whatever you're playing, Cassian, K2, like they love this. At for Empire, Rex, I'm trying to cover all the all like they love recover the supplies.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think every faction probably within the last 6 months has gotten some stuff. Like recover the supplies used to be the rebel objective card, but now that Empire's got great access to infiltrate, now that Maul is out for CIS, now that we've got Padme, recover the supplies can be played by every faction, and infiltrate loves it, not just for the middle box, but just even saving you an action or 2 to get the boxes that you get to place close to your deployment zone. If you've got infiltrate in your list, you're probably including this in your deck.
Yeah, for sure. I would make a recommendation, because this is something people are going to forget, or if you're new, you don't know. Infiltrate is tricky because sometimes you can hang out your units to dry and then get a lot of fire into them, and they go bye-bye.
The first 10 games you'll use infiltrate, you will just get your units straight up killed.
Yes, and that's okay. Like, Ryan, I think we must have talked. I remember talking to you about this, you were a big Jin
I've done
player.
it so many times.
Yeah, and you're like Jin on the box, and then it's like everyone killed that woman. Yeah, and so that's just kind of like a word of warning. Yeah, and then for someone like me who's running a double heavy, which we talked about on the last cast, my double heavy double E-web list, I don't like recover the supplies. Not something I can handle, and that's that trooper leader versus unit leader.
So let's talk about that real quick, because I think it's going to be important as we go down. What we talk about it a lot on the Stabcast is the thumb problem. Your units, when you build a list, you've got to count how many actual thumbs you have. And I count a unit with thumbs is a trooper unit that can pick up a box, repair evaporator, use the intercept transmission point, even kind of hostage exchange or bombing run is great for vehicles until that vehicle dies, because vehicles can't reacquire bombs. And we've got a newer player in our local community who is having a blast, and he is running a 5 emplacement trooper Empire list, just mortars and E-webs, and it's with Bosk, and it's funny. But we got to a point where we were playing recover supplies, and he just blanked and forgot, because that, emplacement troopers, while they do have hands, they got to have their hands on their equipment and can't grab boxes. Tauntauns and creature troopers can't grab boxes. Tanks can't grab boxes. So any of these objectives that have the claim or interact actions on them, 9 times out of 10, they're going to require thumbs to be able to use. And when you're building your lists, and even some of these objectives lend themselves, or not just objectives, but deployments lend themselves to thumbs better. And so no matter what style you're playing, even with this double heavy list, I imagine you have at least 4 to 5 good units of thumbs in your list to go and play objectives that you probably don't want to play.
Of course. Yeah. Like I have, so I have Veers and 5 core troopers. So,
just like 5 cores to throw to the wind. Yeah,
that's right. Right. 2 of them have Astromechs to heal up my big boys. But other than that, they're just there for exactly that. And like an example would be, over the weekend, I played Evan and we had Sabotage the moisture evaporators. And I just put the tank and the ATST in front of them and then had my boys go up and,
it's free cover.
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of, let's talk about Sabotage. So Sabotage is a real interesting one. And I'll let you go first, Ryan, and then I'll give color commentary. So
so Sabotage is it's one of the unique objectives in the fact that most other objectives and condition cards have a range 1 restriction. This one, both players get 2 moisture evaporators, and this one does come in the priority supplies pack. And you take turns placing these on the board, range 1 of your deployment zone, range 2 of each other. And basically, it's kind of, if you've played Star Wars Battlefront, it feels like capture points. You got to run up to the thing and bonk it a couple times, and you can. It's a zero-sum game where if I've got points on it and Jay gets to mine before he can score it, he's got to reduce my score down on it. And this is an interesting one because a lot of times you can deploy these things into hard to reach places for your opponent, and this game almost feels like kill points to me.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is this? I love this one for my list.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Yeah, because it always comes down to kill points. And if you have a good bid and you're a blue player, we talked about bids last week. And you have blue player, you always have advantage for the most part. If the table is constructed well, you'll always have advantage on Sabotage because it forces red player to come to you to try to kill points before you can kill their points, right?
Yeah, well, I think it does even more than that. I would tell every player to put this in their battle deck, whether you like it or not, just because it's so blue player favored, and you only use your battle deck if you're blue player. Because the other cool trick you can do is, since it's the only objective that has a range 2 restriction on where you can place stuff, I will 9 times out of 10 put as blue player my first evaporator in not maybe the safest place for me, but since it gives a foot radius where no other evaporator can go, you can manipulate the areas to where if I can put my thing in a 80% good spot for me, but force you to put yours in places that are just 40% good for you and block out your cover, I'm going to do that every time.
Yeah. And so I should point out too, I just realized is that we're talking to newer players. So what happens is if there's a tie, it goes to blue player.
Right.
So that's
if there's a perfect tie on victory points and kill points, which I've really only seen happen twice.
On both, right. But this one, evaporators always ends with a tie on victory points because
typically,
because of how you set them up and the way that objective works. So then what happens is you have to kill as much of your opponents, and then at the end you count up. If an entire destroyed unit, you count the points with all your upgrades, attachments, and that's how much points you lost. And so your goal is to kill more expensive or more things of your opponent.
Yeah. The other thing that since Sabotage, if you don't want to play the kill points game, which once again I don't because I play the Rebel Hero stuff, I don't want to go fight Jay's tanks. This puts a lot of onus on bounty and secret mission can swing games of Sabotage. Because it is usually going to go to that 4-4 push on score, but if you can get a bounty off, if you can get a secret mission off, then those kill points don't matter.
That's a great
so point. If you're running either of those keywords, this is even something more to prioritize.
All right, what one do you want to talk about next? Your choice, dealer's choice.
You're double heavy, let's talk bombing run.
So this is funny because this one came out, and frankly, the pandemic happened really when it came out. So I don't think we've seen a lot of play with this, but this one is great. And basically what it is is the reason it works for heavies is because you can attach the bombs to whatever unit
Yep.
before the game actually starts in that deployment phase. But then it's after it's dropped, it's a claim, right? So it's a free
Yep.
action to drop, but then a claim, an action claim, which again goes back to your thumbs, and this one is trooper units again, so thumbs
Yeah,
are in
after the initial deployment. So yeah, you each player gets 3 bombs, and you have to get your bombs within range 1 of your opponent's deployment zone and then drop them. But the trick is at the end of every turn, you can blow up a bomb, and I think it does 3 red dice search crit on everything within range 1 of it. But if you drop your bomb too early and your opponent can get to it while with an open activation, they can actually pick it up and turn it off, and it can create these really tense moments of activation control. And for you Rebel players out here, Bombing Run is really good right now with the new updated T-47 because it's immune to range 1 weapons. So the T-47 is the only thing that can on almost any deployment triple move, drop a bomb, and just not care.
The other one for Empire players, speeder bikes. They love this one too. And it's kind of like I played it once with speeder bikes, and it felt almost like a suicide bomber run because it's just,
it really does.
They're just like 3 move right towards their thing, and everything everyone shoot that bike.
Yeah, this creates for me like. I want to say I remember every game of Bombing Run I've played. It probably creates one of the most cinematic objectives.
I agree with that 100%. It is the most fun, the most interesting, and interactive, I think, objective out of all of them.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of fun.
And
I think once
it's
everybody's
chaos.
yeah, because there's no like set hot points or kill boxes where you got to go. You just got to find a way to worm your way to your opponent's deployment zone. It's breakthrough on steroids is what it is.
Yep. Well, let's talk about that then. Breakthroughs.
Yeah.
All right. So breakthrough is basically just get in your opponent's deployment zone. That's it. As many units as you can.
You could play this game theoretically with breakthrough entirely passively, wherever you go clockwise, I go counterclockwise, and we just shake hands in the middle of the table and go our separate ways. But that never happens.
No.
Breakthrough's interesting because there's not, unlike just about every other objective, there's no limit on how many points you can score on breakthrough.
Yep.
And that's something to keep in the back of your mind. Now, 9 times out of 10, your score is going to be less than 3, because it's very hard to move that far. Because if you're moving, you're not shooting.
Yep.
But yeah, if you're running a super high mobility list, if you've got jump and jetpacks or speeders, because this once again is something vehicles can score.
Yep.
And all the vehicles, even the Gav tank, which everyone imagines is very slow, that thing's incredibly fast just for how big that base is.
Yeah, that's the best thing about the tank when I play it is people they underestimate how like a double move gets you almost across the board, and so they're like, whoa, what just happened? And now that they can have e-webs and you could shoot in any direction, it's just like double move, give the e-web an aim through like something you could give it an aim with, like spotter or like targeting array or something,
binos or whatever. Take your choice.
And then zoom up and start blasting away with an e-web. Dude, it's so
and you
great.
either got to shoot the e-web in heavy cover or the thing with armor.
Yeah, that's right. So breakthrough's a pretty easy one. Again, I think that's like Ryan, you were saying, recover the supplies is a good kind of like first game. I think breakthrough is too.
Yeah, I would agree. I definitely agree with that.
So what's your take on because technically speaking, so I'm gonna go a little competitive here, everyone.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But technically speaking, you don't have to keep your deployment markers down. For like you have to measure, right? So
you can do that. Yeah. Usually if I'm playing breakthrough, I'll leave them up.
Same.
For playing bombing run, I'll leave them up. If somebody's got if my opponent has secret mission, I'll leave mine up.
Yeah. Same.
Now, the thing I would always do is, because this is a miniatures game, we have terrain that shifts and bumps and moves. Never trust those markers.
Yeah.
If you get somebody close and you think they're in, always walk around the table and measure.
And measure it. Yeah. Yeah. I always leave mine up too. So just hey, it's kind of a good guy move. Like,
Yeah.
I'll just leave my markers up, not required by the rules though. So just
Nope.
just for those of you, if you go to a local store tournament and somebody pulls their markers for break there, they have every right to do that. It's kind of a jerk move, but
Yeah.
it's part of the rules. So
Mm-hmm.
all right, let's do key positions.
Oh, the boring one. Yeah, key positions. The thing that's in the middle of the table, find a piece of terrain that's near the center, mark it. Both players mark a piece of terrain fully outside their deployment zones, and you sit on it.
Yep.
At the end of the game, it's whoever's got the most key positions wins. It doesn't score at intervals. It's just the end of the game.
Yep.
If you are a list that just wants to fight, this is the objective that you want to play.
Yeah. Again, unit leaders, great for heavies. A little word to the wise for those of you that have the original core set with the Empire and Rebels, your key position card is wrong. And there's an errata, which is in the rules reference online. Or if you buy the new core set, it's in there.
Yeah, they've got the updated copy.
Yeah. So just for those of you wondering why your key positions doesn't have a wall of text like mine does, it's
yeah, there were some oversights early on in the game that luckily got fixed. But yeah, it's a simple, straightforward, apple pie objective.
Yeah.
I think once again, every faction has a list that can be great at this. I think Rebels is the one that's goofiest because they're the units that tend to be around for a good time, not a long time.
Yep.
But force push can destroy games of key positions. So even if you don't have the most weathered army where you can sit and take shots and trade, if you can get either to your opponent's back point or that middle point, a force push can change the course of key positions real hard.
And a little competitive insight. If you have the Gav tank or that new Lat is going to have the oblong, there are chances you could touch two key positions at the same time.
Yep.
So just a little word to the wise that is absolutely legal.
And you can also depending on how your terrain is set up and what gets flagged as a key position with big base vehicles, you can also just kind of sit on them and near them and use your base to either block people out or make them have to run around and clog lanes, and that can be a really effective tactic too.
Yep, that's great. Oh, I love vehicles so much.
I love hitting them with my lightsaber.
Yeah, I bet.
Actually, the T-47 is great now, so I can't say anything.
It's about time.
Surge crit's so cool.
Dude, it's so good now. All right, let's go intercept the transmissions, because again, I think it's a little wonky on how it's the VPs are given. So you got to pay attention, but basically it's middle, a third. So it's the middle of the board and then 3 range to the right and 3 range to the left a long way. And basically
the biggest thing I think new players mess up when they play intercept the transmissions the first time is the setup for intercept transmission does not change with your deployments. It's the only one like that, but it is the intercept towers are going to go where they go, no matter whether you're playing rollout, advanced positions, long march, or battle lines.
Yep. So like if you have long march, the intercept's going to be right on the border of your thing, and that's fine. That's how it's supposed to be.
Yep.
And so basically this one's scored at the end of even rounds. So at the end of round 2 and 4, and then at the end of the game, so now this is a trick. This one trips people up too.
Yes, it
because
does.
End of the game does not mean full 6 rounds. It means if there's a time, like if you're at a store tournament or a larger tournament and you end at round 5 or round 4, you're
done.
Yeah. That's when you get the points. So.
Or your game store closes, or you get kicked out of the basement. Like whenever you decide to end of the game. Yeah. Once again, this is for the Thumbs Club. This is a trooper unit leader only one. And it feels a bit like key positions, but it's a bit more dynamic in the fact that you score at intervals.
Yep.
And so where I don't want to sit on key positions and trade, I'm happy to play intercept transmissions because I know I can, with my typically Rebels are faster than the other factions, I can grab the middle for the first 2 scores and then run away and still win.
Yep.
Run off the middle and give it up.
Yeah, where like, okay, so with like an Empire gun line, what I generally would do is I let them take turn 2.
Mhm.
Here's a little strategy
Yep.
because most of the times they'll end up stranding themselves, and then I can just move up for turn 3 and then just fire and then take them out, by before they
Yeah.
can move back for 4 or try to get out of there, right?
Yeah.
So it's a real
Yeah.
interesting
That's the
thing.
trick. And this is probably, and I glad we both brought up those styles where we both are fighting over this thing for turn 4. I need it before I run away for the first 2 scores. This is probably the objective that makes the most interesting mid game.
Yep.
And while a lot of these other objectives can come down to the late game moves and nail biters, this you really have to structure a lot of your planning around where am I going to be turn 4.
Yep.
And that a lot of times means that when you're taking actions in turn 2, turn 3, maybe you forego an aim action, maybe you forego a dodge token in order to get another move closer, or sometimes even you gotta forego a shot just because you need that transmission tower. This one's a lot of fun.
I think out of all of them, this is the most thinky one. I think maybe
I could see that. It's either this or I think recover, because there's so many shenanigans that can go on with both of these.
Which is interesting, right? So those are those 2 you're going to use a lot of brain power to make sure, and timing is going to be key on both of those, right? All right, let's go over payload. I absolutely hate this one, but it's part of it, so we're going to talk about it because
I love payload.
It makes no sense to me, but basically you have a bombing cart and you set them a token or an objective down on the table to where the bombing cart has to go, and your opponent does the same thing, and you have to get the bombing cart across the board to that token or close to it. Only by having the most unit leaders around.
Everybody's got to push the cart. So this one's interesting because this one is probably out of all the objectives the most table dependent. You can just get screwed if you're in a bad table and you're the red player, or even sometimes the blue player can get screwed by it. There's just not a great piece of terrain, or the only legal piece of terrain is like 4 inches from where your opponent put their bombing cart.
Right.
This one can be kind of finicky. Once again, it is a good one though if you are taking, I think, some vehicles or some non-trooper units, because they can also interact. And this one, it creates the reason I like is it creates 2 different fights. I've got the bulk of my army protecting my cart and a few units going out and just trying to mess with you. And if this can be a nail biter, because a lot of times if the tables are even, it can come down to just, if I stop you from moving your cart just one more turn than you stop me, that can be the difference maker.
For sure. Some things to remember are terrain height does not matter with these. That is something that threw me off the first time I played it. I didn't really read the rules in depth, and I was like, this tall ass building will never stop. Will stop this thing. And it's like, no, it just goes over. And I was like,
goes over it.
For God's sakes, so just something to remember there. That's a good, hey, it doesn't matter how tall stuff is. It's going over.
Right.
So,
it can be fun. It can also be kind of arduous. I think some people are going to love payload like me, and some people are going to hate payload, and that's just kind of the nature of it.
Like me. I think we came. We split, right?
And I will say this one, because of that, doesn't see play too terribly often. And if we want to get really into turn 0 here, a lot of times I take payload in my deck just so my opponent will be forced to veto it, and it's one less actual veto that they get to use, because most people just don't want to play payload.
That's very true. Like me, I would definitely veto it. All right, so the last one, right? We're on the last one, hostage.
I think we just got hostage.
So this one is interesting, and there's a lot there's a lot going on here. So one of the is out of commission to begin with, because they got to start with the hostage, and what has to go is as choose a unit on or as near as possible to the center of the battlefield and perform a speed 1 move with that unit.
So basically at the start of the game, I give Jay one of my units. Jay gives me one of his core units,
Yep.
and we attach a hostage upgrade card to it. We put a hostage mini with it. It goes on the middle of the table, and then I get to do a speed 1 move with Jay's minis, and he gets to do a speed 1 with mine. And then we've got to try to get our hostages, and maybe the other hostage too, back to our deployment zones.
Yep.
Our units are slower when carrying hostages, but they are braver.
Yep.
There's during the first turn, there's some things we can and cannot do.
Yeah, you can't detonate. So, like if you have saboteurs, there's no, or Sabine or Lask, right? You're not detonating stuff to kill them. That you have to claim as an action.
Yeah.
Let's see. You gain a victory when it's in your.
Yeah, so if you have a hostage, you get a victory point, and if you have a hostage inside your own deployment zone, you get an additional victory point.
Yeah, so you have to. It still has to be claimed, and you want it claimed and in your zone. It's real hard.
It's pretty strict to do this. Payload and sabotage are the ones that if you are running those bounty or secret missions, you definitely kind of can prioritize these. Because those are low scoring games, which mean those bounty victory points, the secret mission victory points are worth a bigger percentage of the overall pool.
Yeah. It's so that I think, we're going to go deployment conditions next, but really, I think objectives is the first
objectives
one.
matter.
Yeah. That you really want to focus on.
Matter. Because I think objectives, since once again, it's not like we use 2 of the 3 types of cards from my battle deck and one of them from Jay's. If we're playing, it's all or nothing. And I think you need to pick your objectives first based on your list and based on what you're good at. And these other 2 types of cards are there just to support the objectives you chose to play.
Yeah. And so I think if in order, you should definitely do objectives first. And then, now we'll go over battlefields and conditions that support those objectives. So let's go deployment, advanced position. So basically it's an L on either corner, opposite corners, and then you get scout 1, which means you can perform a speed 1 move, and you lose stationary. So like the
FD cannon is the only thing that
only
affects.
one, right? Yeah.
So you can move your FD cannon.
So if you're up against an FD cannon, get rid of it, advanced positions, because he can blast you from wherever at that point.
Well, not from wherever, from about 4 inches away from his deployment zone. The dream with this, because FDs are really terrible at scoring objectives. The dream is to run an FD cannon with advanced position, and if you deploy just right and there's no terrain in your way, you can just get your FD in range of the intercept transmissions point on your side of the board. And that's the only way you can get an FD cannon to score.
Oh my God, that's awesome. The other thing is, remember with Scout stacks. So any snipers or any units or recon intel upgrades, you're going to stack.
Loves this.
Yeah, he sure does.
Yeah, it's a fun objective. The word to the wise, word to the wary. I tend not to like to play this at tournaments. I actually really like the deployment, and I really like to play. It's actually one of my favorite deployments to actually play. I don't like to play it at tournaments because you're on a clock. And this kind of adds a 7th turn. Like deployment can take a minute as it is, but now that everything has to deploy and take a speed 1 move and recoheed, and then that may change what your opponent does. So now he's got to get thinky. This one can take a minute. Yeah.
And if you're up against a gun line, and they have advanced positions and they have blue player and they put this out, get rid of it, because they're going to sneak up on you faster than you'll be within range of those range 4 weapons faster than you think you're going to be. So,
and especially if they're running a gun line with some or any amount of scout. And now that we've got detachments that can then deploy from beyond those scouted positions, they can get real lulzy real quick.
So that's advanced positions. Battle lines is a range 1 on either side of the long side of the table. This one is interesting. I think just like what I would do is, now it's going to depend on your objectives and stuff, but people tend to spread their army out on this one, and I almost recommend against that. And so you're either going to want a murder ball in the middle or to the left or right and figure out what's best for the table setup. But
the only time in my decks that I take battle lines, I actually tend to cut it quite a bit, is if I'm running multi-commander. Because to take full advantage of the full 6-foot range, I want to play it when my opponent does have to ball up, but I can sneak another commander and something else around the side. But if I'm playing a single commander list, I try not to touch this card.
Yeah, I treat this basically like battle lines with my list. I treat it basically like it's hemmed in, where I just murder ball right in the middle, and I'm like, all right, let's make this happen. Battle lines real good for a secret mission, real good.
Yep. It's good for if you want your list to be able to spread your opponent out.
Yeah.
And that can be really detrimental to heavy lists, to clone balls. Droids don't hate this because they've got their little order chain shenanigans.
Right, they're the one that can spread out, right? And you could potentially cover a lot of area of battle lines with the droids. That's a good point.
Yeah, on the surface it looks like the most blasé and bland deployment card, but there's actually a lot of tricks to it, and it can be pretty detrimental if you're not prepped for them.
Absolutely. All right, disarray. Each player must deploy at least one unit in each of their deployment zones. So basically you have range 4 long, range 1 wide on either corner of the battlefield. Of the long. And this used to be the bane of everyone's existence early on, right? Because we didn't have...
I won so many games because I was the only one who practiced disarray.
Yeah. But now I think it's more reasonable with the number of commanders out there, the number of operatives that give out orders,
and just the number of bravery 2 units in general. You can be a little bit further away from your commanders. So we talk a lot about to the blue player during this. If you're the red player and your opponent has disarray out there, I would almost always try to nab it, just because it's the one card in the game. All of the blue players' deployment zones, when you the first thing you do when you go up to a table is you figure out who's blue, and blue gets to pick a table edge. Major offensive, rollout, advanced positions, all of them, the blue player's corner is always the same corner. It's always on the same side of the table. But if you look at disarray, they're actually flipped. So if the blue player picks, a table edge that is significantly stronger and disarray comes out, you can actually steal the best corner of the board. Because I always, when I'm blue player and evaluating the table, I really just look at the bottom right-hand corner, and I see which of those corners I want.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So disarray, you can kind of flip-flop that if you're prepped to play disarray. And this is one I would definitely say practice before you put it in your deck to take to an event.
All right, so long march is basically range 3 on the short ends of the table. This one is interesting. It says on the tin. You're basically, most people are just piling up in the range, the range 1 from your border to the middle, right, is basically where you're going to put your units. I would say most people, if somebody has Vader and they do long march, you're going to get distracted by the name and think that Vader's not going to be able to roll up on you and do some damage. And it's wrong. He is absolutely going to mess you up with long march. So don't get confused by that.
Yeah. The other thing to consider with long march is because, and I think this can also be true for the other, what we call short end deployments in rollout and danger close, is now your commanders, instead of operating on the 6-foot line for their command bubble, I love long march if I'm playing high, like bravery 3, bravery 4, or Vader commanders, because if you keep them kind of towards the middle third of the board, their bravery bubble is going to go all the way out to the board edges, and it's a lot harder to catch stuff out of that bravery bubble.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something to always be aware of. But yeah, that distance between deployment zones is shorter than you think.
It's real short. Yeah. All right, major offensive. This one is like
milk toast.
Yeah,
it's what everybody plays.
It's real easy. It's easy. Not a lot of real strategy to this one.
It is the most balanced deployment. I think. I can't tell you the last time I've rotated all my other deployment cards in and out. It's been years since I've played a list not with major offensive in it. And I think I did it just to run a battle deck without major offensive. It's great. It's the table I always judge when I'm trying to pick if I'm blue or red player. or which table edge I want as blue player, I should say. I always just look at major offensive, like what those deployment zones would look like, and I make my choice off that because it shares a lot of real estate with all the other objectives. Put it in your deck. Enough said.
Yep, exactly. All right, rollout, my favorite one. During the deployment phase, each vehicle may deploy within range 1 of a friendly deployment zone. So
diet long march.
Yep, it's exactly right. And then you get to, it's nice to kind of have some more freedom with vehicles, because the thing with vehicles, for those of you who haven't played them yet and are looking to play them, is depending on the table and the terrain density, it can get real complex to position vehicles in a way where they'll be effective. And so
I fly air speeders. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, right. But giving you that range 1 in addition, right, it's really nice to give you more options. If you're playing vehicles, this is a must have in your
absolutely. If you and not just even heavy vehicles, even if you're taking like ATRTs or any of the vehicles,
airspeeder, bikes, anything.
God, this is the one card that kind of makes me want to play clones, just so I can get a flamer ATRT that has scout on rollout, like turn 1 up in someone's grill.
Oh yeah, that would be pretty good. I hate clones though. I'll never play clones.
The other cool trick that you can do is I think this is prevalent right now just to Rebels, soon to be prevalent to Rebels and Empire. We're getting transports, and when you deploy outside of your deployment zone, anything with transport capacity becomes part of your deployment zone. I can't tell you how many games I've played rollout with an X-34, thrown R2 in it, and it just zips up and zoop and turns 2. I've got secret mission done. Or an op-luke delivery system or a turn 1 explosions is real funny.
Man, and that lat that's coming from Empire, because it's going to be closed transport. We're assuming it's closed transport at this point. Imagine having some snow troopers and that you just fly it over with flames and just jump out and start lighting things on fire. Oh my God, it's gonna be so good.
It's gonna be gross. So you can do some neat things, but this is definitely. Do you have 2 vehicles or more? Take rollout. If you don't, probably there's other things that are worth more in your deck
for sure. All right, hemmed in. I love hemmed in. I love hemmed in as blue player.
Sure. Yeah. It's for me, it's kind of like Sabotage is for the objective deck. Like, it's the thing you don't want to see as red player, so you should probably always take it because you only use your battle deck when you're blue. Now, I have also seen some tables where, because it uses weird amounts of real estate that aren't normally reserved for deployment zones, there can be some terrible terrain in that blue player zone.
For sure.
Where you're half your deployment zone's taken up by impassable line of sight blockers. So it can be very table dependent, but the blue player gets a triangle on their side of the table in the dead center. And then the red player gets basically 2 halves of major offensive in their 2 corners. Now there is no disarray. There is no limit. The red player can just throw them all in one corner if they so choose. But you can put your opponent in a pickle as a blue player if you can get intercept transmissions with hemmed in, or recover supplies, or any objective that has a mandated piece in the dead center, because you're 2 speed 2 moves away from the center objective.
And I would say, again, another really nice vehicle battlefield, because you can just put your 2, let's say you play 2 vehicles, let's say you play 2 AATs. I won't even talk about Empire anymore, just 2 AATs. You put them in that little top hat part of your hemmed in section and just dare people to move.
Exactly.
Go for that objective. I dare you.
Right? If you're the red player, you probably want to, if you've got the availability, you probably want to do your best to veto hemmed in, unless you've got a prepared plan. Now, Sabs, if you're running Sabs, hemmed in as red isn't terrible. Because they're all going to be bunched up anyway. And you're not that far away from each other if you are running like a short range or a melee focused list. But that can create some really wonky like payload hemmed in is just a nightmare.
Yeah. All right, and then finally, danger close. Basically, this is kind of like advanced positions without the advancing, and
It's
a little bit closer.
it's advanced positions and battle lines had a baby.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, no real special rules to this. I mean, I think this gives you the most opportunity to deploy, and so almost becomes it's hard to give any like real clues on how to do this. Just basically
Right.
don't, if someone puts a unit on the tip of one of their little long edges, don't do the same thing, because they're going to be able to shoot you, because it's
Unless, I mean, yeah, there's just a range 3 gap. It's the
yeah.
only deployment we have where we're just a range 3 away from each other.
Yeah.
I liked this one a lot. I like Danger Close a lot. Rebels have access to Mandos who are fast, and one gets a range 2. It makes closing those gaps a whole lot easier. Tauntauns are great on this. Any speed 3 unit you have.
Yeah, secret mission would be good.
Secret missions can be, because you actually have a lot of play. But the weird thing about it is, when, myself included, when table makers are making tables, they tend not to put stuff in those gaps where Danger Close is, and so it can create utter shooting galleries. Because all the big line of sight blockers tend to be towards the middle of the map,
right?
And this is one, especially depending on the objective you're playing, where you may not venture very many units to the middle of the map. If you want to play on the edges, this is the one that you want to play with. I played a tournament. I was lucky enough to be able to play a tournament this weekend, and I won both of my games off of getting Danger Close with Op Luke with Mind Trick and just panicking stuff off the board because everything was so close to the board edge to start. It can be really dangerous if you're not prepped for it.
Yeah, Danger Close, not great for vehicles. It is not fun for vehicles, because the problem is they end up stacking up on each other, and you got to move. It's just so if you don't have vehicles and you're a blue player and your opponent has vehicles, Danger Close good for you. So
yeah.
All right, let's move on to conditions. Let's start with the easiest one: clear conditions. Nothing happens. You're fine. Just play the game. Good luck.
Unlike Major Offensive, I don't think I've included this in my deck in years because it's boring. Nothing happens. Not fun. Lots of other players really like it for a variety of reasons. But you should
I think it's one of those, it's kind of just a default card, like especially like, let's say for my list, like I have a number that I know I'll put in, and then all the other ones don't really play well for me, so I just throw clear conditions in, because it's like, all right, just I need to have this in. Hostile environment. So when trooper units whose unit leader is not in base contact with a piece of terrain cannot remove suppression tokens during the end phase. So at the end of each round, you remove one suppression token from any units that have it. Well, with this, if you're not in base contact with terrain, you don't do that. Great for vehicle lists.
Great for vehicle lists. Great for dense tables. Great for lists if you have more sources of suppression removal than your opponent through Inspire or Recover effects. It can be great. If you've got Mind Trick or ways to generate suppression on your opponents, like Cad Bane or Callus can, it can also be great. I like this card a lot. This is one of my kind of mainstays. The thing you got to be aware of, and I'll call out my co-host Tim, he plays this card a lot as clear conditions 2, because halfway through the second or third turn of the game, they realize they've been just taking suppression off of everything and forgetting that this card exists. So it can be clear conditions 2 if you and your opponent just forget.
That happens a lot, actually. So all right, next one, limited visibility. So during the first round, units cannot perform range attacks beyond range 2. During the second round, units cannot perform range attacks beyond range 3. Great list. If you don't have a lot, great condition if you don't have a lot of range and your opponent does. This is like if you're a hero centric like Ryan's Rebels, you're gonna wanna put limited visibility, because it's gonna really stop most lists from doing much to you, so that you can get in position.
And even if you are running but you'll be like I'm running snipers, so I don't want limited viz. Even when I'm running, double, triple sniper, I still don't mind it, because that means they can get on the map, grab a box, and get back to cover before they can start shooting. And you can really position the battlefield. If you want a shorter game, I want to see limited viz when I play intercept transmissions.
Yeah.
So you can't try to ping me off that middle point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
This one can mess with the timings of games, and if you want the game to go longer before the trades start happening, this is definitely one you want to see. But once again, probably out of all of these cards, this is the most polarizing.
Yep, for sure. And the one that people forget, because what'll happen, especially like a turn 2 Bosk.
Yeah,
this really messes him up, and people forget, and they'll be like, well, I'm gonna shoot, and you're like, no, you're not.
Or the first year turn 1 Leia's coordinated bombardments.
Yeah. Or maximum firepower.
Yeah, max firepower.
Yeah.
That can happen a lot.
Yeah,
This one I don't tend to see forgotten as much, because usually it's selected and not vetoed by one player or another very intentionally, and it's in the forefront of their mind more than the hostile can just be just like, hey, it's hostile.
Yeah. It's an interesting definitely an interesting battle condition. So all right, minefield. So basically you and your opponent each get 2 mines. You place them. They have to be on range 2 and beyond of each other, and beyond range 1 of deployments. And then basically when you get within range 1, you roll a die. And if it's a shield, a defense, red defense die, right? Yep, red defense die. On a shield result, it detonates. On a surge result, it detonates twice. It's a red black blast impact 1. These are good for like, if you setting it up so that your opponent has to pay for trying to go to an objective. Another good one for vehicles, because here's the funny part. You drive over it with a vehicle and you cover the token with your vehicle. Well, now it's not in line of sight of other units, so it can't get them.
Well, so this is where I'm gonna point to the rules.
Go ahead.
You cannot overlap condition tokens. So there's a workaround for that.
Yeah. Yep.
They did update it because of schmucks like you. So it probably will go off. But another note: repulsor vehicles can be affected by it, but they don't detonate them.
Yep.
It's if you've got a plan for minefield, include it. If you don't have a plan for it, cut it.
Yeah.
I tend not to mind it too much, because we're rebels, we're nimble, we can take a dodge token and then go throw ourselves on it and probably be okay.
Cullen's Empire do fine. They don't, because you got red saves.
You got the red save. If you're running a suppressive list, this can be great because it can do some of the work for you. I feel it's a pretty safe object or a condition. If you don't really like any of your opponent's other options, you can just take minefield.
Yeah, I'd like it just because it makes your opponent think and like make decisions. Like, they may advance a unit up just to detonate it, to get rid of it, that maybe they wouldn't have before, and so it just creates some scenario.
And the best is I had a this past weekend, one of my opponents did that to me, and he rolled that blank on that mine die twice until a bunch of units were all on top of it.
That's awful too. Okay, rapid reinforcements. So basically, starting with blue, we each set aside 1 to 2 friendly, non-commander, non-operative trooper units, and then we, just keep them on your side of the table. Make sure you mark them so that we know. And then when you draw them during the first round, that's when you deploy them. They have to be range 2 of all enemies?
Range 2. So unlike infiltrate, that's range 3. It's a little bit closer. When you pull a token out of your bag and everything of that suit has already been activated, you have to deploy it, and that's its whole activation is deploying. This card, like key positions, if you have the original core box, there is a misprint because originally it was 0 to 2. But they found out that everyone was playing it as clear conditions because nobody used it, and the card is there to be used. So now it's 1 to 2. It's I love this card. I love this card because nobody else plays it, and no one else has got ideas or bakes ideas for it into their lists.
It's real. It's an interesting card, and Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. Fleet troopers love it. FD cannons love it. E-webs love it.
Yeah, E-webs really like it.
Even the rapidly deployed dewback can be funny.
I had early on, I had a 10 activation Pelp list with E-webs, and oh man, I would do like you could do your entire army command card where you just give everyone an order, and then you just hold the E-webs and you make a decision of when they're going to deploy. So you can
once
deploy
everything's
them
developed,
last and put them in a real bad spot. So
Yes.
entire legion. That's
So one of the other cool tricks you can do with this card is if you're scared of it and you have to play it, you can usually my backfield, if I'm playing rapid reinforcement, is coheated really sporadically where bodies are just kind of flung everywhere because they've got to deploy range 2 of everybody. You just take up as much real estate as you can to force your opponent out. Or if your opponent does want to ball all up, depending on your objective, like breakthrough rapid reinforcements can be hilarious. You can also, I guess, score an FE laser cannon on breakthrough that way.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's the chaos factor card. I think if clear conditions is the safe one and limb viz is the slow card, if you want a chaotic game, play some rapid reinforcements.
All right, so fortify positions. This one to me is, they originally in the rules, you were supposed to bring 4 barricades and we took turns placing them on tables, right? But then as the tables got more advanced and as everyone got in the train, this went away. So they were like, you know what? We really liked that idea. Let's bring it back in a condition card. So basically it's each have 4 barricades. You place them until 8 are placed. And there's some, you can't place them with 1 or 2 placed inside the deployment zone or within range 1 or 2 of the deployment zone.
Yeah, so they're probably not going to be in the middle of the map to fortify that middle position.
Right.
But yeah, it's like, hey, I heard you like heavy cover. Have some heavy cover.
Yeah, and it's like, we really want you to buy our barricades, please.
Yeah. Well, luckily you get enough in the core boxes
to do
but
this,
yeah,
for sure.
I had to go buy a barricade expansion. I'm not going to lie, when this came out, because I don't know where my original barricades went.
Oh man, most of mine are baked into my terrain. They're just built into it, So.
Yeah, they're in a shoebox somewhere in my house.
So that one, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's if you want a gunline fight, you take it. If you want to get out on the map, don't.
So supply drop. So you get a deck of cards that are the size of upgrades. And basically we're going to put some tokens out on the battlefield, 6 of them. They have to be placed beyond range 1 of each deployment and range of each other. And then basically for free action, if you're in contact with one of those tokens, you get to supply.
Yeah, you get to shuffle the deck of cards, draw 2, pick 1, put the other one back in.
Yep.
They can do a ton of different things, from token generating, order generating, repair, and heal. There's all kinds of goofy stuff.
Yeah. They're all right. Like, I think you have to really look at the deck and see, hey, does this make sense for my list, and does it, how does it work? How would I function with these? Who do I throw at this? Will I get what I need? Because it's random, so you may not get the back to capsules. You may get the grappling hooks. Like, it's random. It's chaos again, I think.
Yeah, it is. I will say to your droid listeners out there, you want this in your deck, droid players. Every one of these cards is great for droids.
Yep. They're even on the picture for the card, so that's why.
Yeah, they can make so much magic happen with supply drop. I think Rebels and Republic can do okay with it. Especially if you can get the right units there. Obviously, for all the token generation and the healing is great for clones because they can share everything. Empire probably gets, like, none of these cards are bad, but I think Empire gets the least out of it.
Yep.
And since you guys are both getting equal access to these cards, and it is a note that each of the objective tokens can be used, or condition tokens can be used twice.
Yeah.
So theoretically, if I'm placing 3 tokens, I'm going to get 6 cards out of the deck. So yeah, it's the dilemma. Do you want to have cool things, but give cool things to your opponent too?
Yep.
It can be a very swingy card if you get the good stuff and your opponent doesn't.
And I would say, depending on objective and deployment and the table, I don't know. I've played games with this where we maybe used it once, and then I've played games with it where we've used up all the tokens. So And yeah, that swing is real big with this one.
If you've got more scout than your opponent, I would tend to like it because
Yeah.
you can probably go and grab yours quicker than your opponent can and maybe bully them off some.
Yeah, and get some choices for yourself. Yeah.
Mhm. But yeah, before the options run out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting card. You're gonna look at the mechanic. You're gonna look at the cards that come in the pack, and you as a, I think maybe even less as a list note, you as a player are gonna figure out, is this a thing that you want or not?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And then the last one is War Weary. When checking whether a unit is panicked, the range at which a unit friendly commander's courage instead of its own is reduced by 2 to a minimum of 1. So everyone's reduced to 1 unless you have one of the upgrades for your commander.
Yeah.
I like this in my list particularly.
Yep.
I'm not going to fancy this as everyone should have this because
No.
the list
I
that
hate
I
this
have
card.
tends to murder ball, especially outside of the 2 heavies. And so I don't care. It's fine by me. And the chances of you putting a lot of suppression on those units for me anyways is low. But yeah, this one is not for everybody and it's very specific.
It's super specific. Another thing to note, since it specifically calls out commanders, if you are running the new field commanders, they are immune to this because they're still technically heavies.
Yeah. Can I just say something just to get this off my chest?
This is your show. You can say whatever you want.
I know, but you know what really bothers me? I'm going to complain just a little bit here for everybody at home. They did the field commander and they didn't errata for General Vice and Wedge to be field commanders. I think that was a huge miss.
All right. So I'm not going to lie. I almost agree with you, but then they reduced their cost down to 1 point. So I'm like, I'm okay with it.
Still not using them. You may use Wedge. But
Wedge is bonkers good right now.
Yeah. But I don't think General Vice doesn't really have a ton of play. Right now. Anyway, sorry everybody, that was off topic. But so Ryan, where can people find you? So how can I get to Stabcast and find your stuff?
You can get to Stabcast by just typing into your podcast engine of choice, SW Stabcast, and you can find us there. We're also on all the social places you would expect to find us, with somewhat frequency. But yeah, you can find us there. We also have a Twitch stream that we're gonna hopefully be covering some Invader League stuff. We'll see if we get lucky. But yeah, that's SW Stabcast, wherever you find this terrible podcast.
Yeah, and I'll say, that's right. I'll say I highly recommend you guys listening, especially if you're into battle reports. You guys all have great senses of humor and great chemistry together. And I, personally, I like everybody that's on your team. You're all good guys. So I hope everyone goes over and listens to you guys. You absolutely should. They're great. And the more support we can give to other community members, the better.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Join me next week. We'll be talking about the command phase and command cards. All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Join us next week for another edition of the Fifth Trooper podcast.